Hey, what's up? I'll tell you what's up. Today I have the pleasure to be with Idahosa Ness from mimicmethod.com. It's so nice to finally meet you, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Before we start, do you mind briefly introducing yourself and also tell us what your website and YouTube channel, because you have a YouTube channel, what this is all about?
Yeah, so my name is Idahosa Ness. I'm an American, grew up only speaking English, but I've since learned 7 languages and using a unique method that I call the mimic method. And it differs from everything else in that we teach you how to mimic. We teach you the very precise details of pronunciation, accent, articulation, and how to sound exactly like a native speaker in your target language. And we do that before you learn vocabulary or grammar or anything else, because the idea is that the way humans learn language, the way we did it as children, and we can do it again as adults, is we mimic. We watch how the natives are interacting and moving and sounding in the environment, and then we embody that in ourselves. We mimic that. So it's a very intuitive way of learning. We use musical techniques, we use theatrical techniques, and we do that in a very methodical way. So on my YouTube channel, I talk about that in different ways. I put up videos from time to time or demonstrating our techniques. But on our website at flow.mimicmethod.com, we have lots of content in various different languages. I've been teaching this method for over a decade now, so we've had tens of thousands of students go through our programs for Spanish, French, German, English. It's a universal technique that applies to all languages. And yeah, that's the basic gist of it.
How many languages do you speak currently, or how many languages are you learning?
I haven't been learning languages in a long time. My 20s was all about travel and learning, but I speak 7. So I grew up only speaking English. Then my first language I learned was Spanish in Mexico. I'm actually in Mexico right now, funny enough. And after that, I was 17 around that time when I learned my first language. Then in university, I learned Chinese, Mandarin. Lived in China for a bit. Then after university, I learned Brazilian Portuguese. Then I went to Montreal and learned French, or franglais, and then learned like proper French later. And then what happened next? I went to Germany and learned German, Portugal, European Portuguese, which is quite different. And then also a bit of Italian, though I've kind of like lost my Italian now. But yeah, that's my language background, dabbled in other things as well. I'm half Nigerian, so I can mess around with like pidgin English. But yeah, mostly for the past several years, my main focus has been more on teaching and developing the methodology than more so than going out and learning new languages.
You mentioned theater, you mentioned singing. I also saw some videos about guided meditation and relaxation. So I'm really curious about your background. Do you like work for a radio station, or did you take singing or theater classes yourself, or are you currently working in a university in the field of linguistics? So what's your background exactly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much an autodidact, self-taught. So my beginning was, yeah, I learned Spanish when I was in Mexico. I went to like a program and was doing the conventional approach that everybody else does, like studying hard, doing grammar, vocabulary. And I got really good at reading in Spanish, but then I go out into the streets of Mexico and start speaking to people. And I'm like, "Buh." I couldn't understand what they were saying when they were speaking natural, fast speed. When I spoke, I was always getting tongue-tied, stuck in my head. Like, I said, comer, como, drop the ER, like all that kind of stuff. So it was very frustrating because I wasn't able to really connect and communicate with people the way I wanted to. And then one day I just kind of had this epiphany, or not even an epiphany, just kind of an idea. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to suck at Spanish, I might as well have fun doing it. So from now on, instead of me just like saying the words as I had been doing, like, hola, ¿dónde está la biblioteca? I'd be like, let me channel the spirit of like Antonio Banderas, so like, you know, and I'd be like, and I get super dramatic, like a telenovela, and I'd be like, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? You know, and I'd be like really doing it. But I took it seriously because I'm like, no, that's not exactly how they say it. It's not like biblioteca. It's like biblioteca. Their tongue is here. So I just started kind of like asking questions and going deeper. And just by like taking that serious, not forgetting about grammar, forgetting about vocab, I just wanted to sound more like them. After about 2 weeks of doing that, I had this massive transformation where all of a sudden I could just understand everything. And then when I would speak, it was just like channeling through me without even thinking. So that was my first experience, and I just kind of discovered that on my own. And then later on, I started developing that into a methodology, integrating my background. I grew up playing musical instruments, or at least classical violin. I also do freestyle rapping. So I have a musical background and instinct. And at some point, I realized that other people weren't able to pronounce or really get that stuff down because they lacked that ear. So I figured out how to apply musical ear training techniques to this instrument of our mouth, of our body. Is the same process. You're just learning motor coordination and associating that to like find perception, oral perception. So anyways, I started just developing that. So in school, I was studying international affairs, but I started getting obsessed with phonetics and linguistics and was just reading books and teaching myself. And then, yeah, eventually, actually in Brazil, I came up with the method, started teaching people, built a business out of it. And then at some point, I started to branch out. First, we only taught accent and pronunciation. I just taught you how to mimic with our method. And then people would ask me, well, how do I actually go out and learn it now that I mimic? So I started developing a new methodology that was based off of improv theater to get people to be more comfortable, because I found the other big major block people had was that they weren't able to kind of get into character the way I was describing earlier. And there's like shyness and nervousness. So I started developing a coaching method around that. So basically the way I operate, fundamentally, I'm an inventor, like I'm an educational inventor. I come up with ideas all the time. I'm always trying to solve problems. I'll go to various fields. So I'll go see a singing teacher, go see like a acting teacher, or watch videos, read books, get ideas, and then integrate it into my own methodologies. But I've never had any formal training in any stuff I do.
A lot of people say I can't become fluent because I don't have the money to travel. Now, from what you said, if you have all the means on the internet to listen and to repeat and to, like you have your courses too, would it be possible to actually become fluent on your own from your room? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. You can get a very advanced level of speaking doing just conversation. So break it down like this. In our conversation methodology, so we have two methodologies, pronunciation methodology and a conversation methodology. In our conversation, we call it the conversation game. And what I'm giving to people is a metaphor, because people default to the metaphor of an academic subject where I have to memorize facts and formulas. And I'm like, no, learning Spanish is not like studying chemistry. It's more like learning how to play basketball or tennis. It's a game. You have to take a gamer mindset. So a basketball player, imagine you met someone and they're like, oh, I'm trying to get good at basketball, but I'm so bad at it. I've been trying for years and I'm just terrible. And, oh, well, what have you been doing? Well, I've read lots of books on basketball. I got this basketball app on my smartphone I've been playing every day and getting like points on. It's like, okay, cool. But like, do you get on the court and pick up the ball and play games? Like, no, I'm not ready for that stage. Like, I don't really like to do that. It's like, okay, well, that's why you suck at basketball, because you never get into the game and actually play the game. So what's the conversation game? That's when you're actually having a conversation with someone. So everything else you're doing, whether you're looking at vocab or whatever, the whole purpose of that is so you can improve your game in conversation. Now, of course, if you're living in the country, it's like people playing basketball all day, right? There's all kinds of games you can jump into just walking. But being in your room, you have to create that for yourself. So there's different websites out there, of course, that allow for you to have conversation with someone. But still, people have struggle where you find like a tutor or whatever, and you still have that academic environment where they're teaching you, showing you conjugations. So what we do in our conversation method is we've designed these role play scenarios. You're a beginner, so you're not yet ready to, act out a full-on conversation. So we give you like this microcosm mini drill, like a little mini basketball game, so to speak. And then you practice that one-on-one with your person. And, like any game, the number one determinant of how fluent you are in that game, how smooth you can operate in that game, is how much time do you spend actually playing the game and playing to win. So you can create all those minutes in a virtual immersion for sure. I will say, however, there is limitation. There is much that happens in the physical world. Like if I learn a new word and in the environment of actually needing it, like I'm at a store and I have the avocado in my hand, I'm like, ¿cómo se dice? Right? What's this called? And the guy's like, aguacate. And I'm like, aguacate. I'm not sure I got it first, but I get my point. And then, and you're like, okay. So all those associations are going into the word aguacate, avocado. And versus if I'm just talking about it on a Zoom call, it's better than just looking at an app or a phone, but it doesn't have the full sensory experience. So yeah, we try to create these environments. We're training up these like kind of theatrical role play practice partners and building out a directory of them for people to practice with. And that's very useful. I want to make that as good as possible. But my passion really is to get people out of their houses, not necessarily to travel across the country or because it might be expensive, but even if it's just usually someone has something like they have like, oh, I'm married to someone, I want to talk to their family, or my coworker is Latino, or the guy down the street, and just finding it in the real world. Like my real passion is getting people into the real world and out of the matrix. So I have mixed feelings of like, a part of me is like, let's create the ultimate virtual immersion program. And I'm like, no, people have to leave their houses. So for me, it's kind of like, this is just your practice arena to really get you, excited and get the flow going in a safe space. But when we really push people out the house and like, no, now that you have the skills, go out there and like, ask that bodega guy for a ham sandwich in Spanish, and then if he has any kids, and then make a new friend. That's what I'm really about.
If you had one piece of advice for people who are struggling, really struggling with their pronunciation, you might have had some students who were facing that. What would you say to them?
If I gave one simple tip, our website has lots of free content you can dive deep into. But imagine you don't have that. You have one thing you can do. Think back to my story in Mexico. I didn't know any phonetics, any technical detail at that time. All I had was a genuine desire to do better and get it right. So just paying more attention and putting in more effort. What happens, I find, is people, they'll try, sound bad, get self-conscious, start like, oh, I'm terrible at this, and then give up and never actually try. But if you take it seriously and you just pay attention, you can take YouTube videos, reduce the speed to 0.25, 25% speed, and then just watch their face, look at their mouth, and then don't look at their disembodied, like we've been trained by our machines to do, like move your face with them. Try to like, aguacate. No, it's not how he did it. Oh, his tongue is like aguacate. And like, if you just spend 15 minutes a day in that deep attentional state, you mentioned all learning is self-learning. Learning is fundamentally driven by attention. The more deeply you attend to something, the more that thing shapes you. And so people, when I travel around the world and you meet someone who has like flawless English, right? You're like, oh, wow, you're like some kid in a favela here in like Rio speaking flawless English. It's always the same story. It's not that they went to some fancy program or use an app. It's always the same story. They watched some TV show or some music song, some artist they loved, and they would just sit there obsessively watching and mimicking them, because children tend to do that anyways, or younger people tend to do that anyways. And they don't know what they're saying. They're just obsessively trying to be like that person. And then that shapes their identity, and now they just kind of naturally speak. So that's what it is. People just don't make that effort or dive in. It can feel awkward the first few minutes, but then if you just wait 5 minutes, it'll suck you in like a vortex. And then you're just like noticing it everywhere, like people's lips moving and stuff like that. So that's my number one advice, just start paying attention. And actually in the first module of our program, it just walks you through each part of the human instrument, of the communication instrument is like eyes. And then it's just like, watch this video and watch this guy's eyes, mimic his eyebrows. And it's like mouth and lips. Now just mimic his mouth. Now look what his hands are doing. And then like bit by bit, it just primes these things in your attention. And then you walk off into the world to get like a ham sandwich again. And then you're like, whoa. And then all of a sudden you just notice people's faces way more. Like there's so much going on in the social world. If you just pay attention to it, you'll get sucked in.
So here comes the last part, the rapid fire questions. So basically I'm going to ask you a series of questions to answer as fast as possible. Just to reassure you, it's not trick questions or whatever, it's just to get to know you better. So if you're ready, then let's do this. Morning or evening?
Morning.
Movies or TV shows?
Movies.
When you watch TV shows, do you watch shows one episode at a time or binge watch the whole seasons?
Binge. That's why I don't do TV shows, because I binge it.
Right. Makes sense. Are you more an introvert or an extrovert?
Extrovert, 100%.
Okay, this is going to be interesting. Say the first word in French that comes to mind.
Bonjour.
Have you ever lived more than 6 months abroad?
Yeah, I spent most of my life abroad.
Fresh food or fried food?
Fresh, 100%.
Say the first word in Spanish that comes to mind.
Caderno.
Where did you grow up?
Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
What's your favorite day of the week?
I've lost track of what day of the week is a long time ago. So I never had a real job, so all days just merge into one kind of thing.
Say the first word in Portuguese that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Where is the last place you visited?
For Mexico, where I come from Mexico, where was I? New York. No, I was in Chicago. Sorry, I was in Lake Michigan on my friend's lake house. And it's really nice there. Like, it's a lake that looks like an ocean. It's crazy.
Say the first word in German that comes to mind.
Glockenspiel.
Do you have a bucket list?
Not really written out, but I definitely have like a list of things that I aspire to do at some point, yeah.
Can you touch your toes without bending your knees?
Yes, I can.
All right, so that was the rapid fire questions. Thank you so much for answering. And that concludes actually our interview. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah, everyone keep flowing. And you want to check us out more, just go to midmethod.com.
All right, thank you so much. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please let me know with a thumbs up, and don't forget to share and subscribe to support this channel.